Good morning.
Good morning.
You want to track down 1 Kings 18. We are still there this morning. For those who have been gone for a while, just to get you up to speed, we are in the middle of our pass through Elijah and his ministry in the land of Israel. And can we back up to that little, whoop, she's got her busy. Caught her. She's only trying to do 6 things at once, and I'm adding to her difficulties here. Can we back up to the little bigger map of you have one there handy? There we go. Thank you. We have followed Elijah as he is called into the nation, and just to get your mind back around where we are in the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel has been under this new king Ahab relatively successful economically. And to understand a little bit, I'm going to back you up just a little bit further as we look at the nation of Israel and the changes that have taken place in the nature of their lives. When they started out with, going all the way back to Abraham and following through Moses all the way to Joshua, they were pretty much a nomadic people. They were a smaller group. They were very isolated within their group because they were moving as this unit through the land. And up until the time that Joshua takes them into the land, a lot of the outside influences have been kept out. Sure, there was influence from Egypt while they were down there, and there were some issues that they dealt with, but God had them kind of cornered out in the desert, if you will, and he spent a lot of years pounding away trying to get his truth through to them. And in that time they got the law, they got a lot of directions about how they should live. They received the outline for the tabernacle and all those things to do with worship. And most of the outside influence came from just their contact as they moved through the country, but they did it as a group. And it was a really different dynamic than we will see today in this passage here. When Joshua came along, it shifted from this nomadic lifestyle to a more agricultural, farming-based living for a long time. They were scattered in smaller cities and towns out through the productive areas of the land, and the big battle was to find out where was the best grazing land, where was the best crop land, where could you produce the food, and they were scattered all over the area without a lot of large cities. And then as they get more developed, by the time you get to 1 Kings, and this passage here, you've seen it change. Jerusalem has become a major city and a center of their population. You can see Samaria that we talked about, and other cities have become more people gathered around them. And we're starting to have this more urban type influence in the land. And along with that city growth and everything, the way of living is changing now from this agricultural base strictly to the fact that there are these major trade routes going up and down through here, coming down this way and across. They are the center of the world. If you are over here in Asia and you want to trade with Africa, it comes through there. If you're Africa wanting to go up to Asia or to Europe, everything has to go through here because there's desert out here that's relatively impassable. So you're seeing this trade thing starting to develop, the cities that develop around that on those trade routes, and the commerce that takes place, and along with all that trade comes all the ideas and the influence of the whole rest of the world coming through there. So the challenges to them was, how do you maintain your faith, and how do you maintain the purity of your belief in your government and the things that God set up with all these influences now funneling through the middle of them.
There's certain passages in where it talks about trading off. The Lord was just pleased with them because there's all the business that was going on on the Sabbath day. People wanted to lock them out of the...
Yeah, they had to lock the gates to keep all the people out.
Well, that was a perfect setup for them to carry out God's plan as well, because they were to be an influence the other way instead of...
Yeah, they're supposed to be the light. And he says, here, I've set you out here on a hill. You're the light of the world out here, and to be a witness and a testimony to me and to what I can do, what I've done, and the whole story from the Exodus on through was supposed to be proclaimed by you to everyone coming through. Unfortunately, as we come to this passage in 1 Kings 18, we have seen that degenerate terribly. First of all, we've had the division in the land. We've had the southern kingdom that's down here, Judah. There's the two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and a lot of Levi that joined them down there. But we've got those folks down there, and then you have the larger northern group, thank you, right here, that we're working with, and probably more prosperous. If you were to compare them economically, and in fact, if you listen to or read the historians that are really non-religious Jewish historians, they will look at this period and they will say, well, Judah was kind of an economic wreck down there. They were just surviving. And Israel, the northern kingdom, was going great guns. This period of Omri was a huge growth time, and all those folks up through Ahab were doing booming business economically. So they're doing really great that way. And they're bringing in those influences from around them. Of course, we know Ahab has really upped the ante, and that he wants to be connected with one of the most modern, prosperous, going concerns out there, and that's Phoenicia. Phoenicia is the high-tech. It is the, oh, right here, Pat, I'll bet that's what you're looking for. They are the Simi, or not the Simi Valley, they are the Silicon Valley of their world. They're the ones with the technology. Where did Solomon go when he wanted to get sailors and people to learn how to do trade and how to do shipping? Well, he went up here to these folks. When you want skilled people to build your temple, to handle the woodworking and the crafting of the gold and all those things, where do you go? You go up here to Phoenicia, because that's where the high-tech center of the world is. And Ahab and his father Omri have made sure that they made some inroads there, and they wanted to secure an economic relationship with those folks, and he has married the beautiful young Jezebel and brought her down to be his queen here in the kingdom of Israel, here in Samaria. And it has brought a whole new shade of things.
So in spite of the drought, and in spite of the fact that God physically hurts most people because of the way they're dressed, they're still economically doing okay?
Well, in these last 3.5 years, it's been tough. It's been extremely difficult because it has not only been here, it has gone all the way up here through Tyre and Sidon, that the droughts hit the whole area. So yeah, it's not, these last 3.5 years are extremely tough years, but up until that point, they were doing booming business. And I suspect even within that, there are some people profiting off of trade, because if you have a drought, those who have money are going to bring food from down here or food from up here, and they're going to be making big bucks. The price of wheat goes up when there's a shortage. And somebody somewhere is making money off of that. So there's still some economic activity going on, but it's just the agricultural base in the northern kingdom, and probably clear into Judah, and certainly north into Phoenicia, where we know Elijah was for a while. It's tough. Things are really difficult, and it's been really hard. But Jezebel brought a whole new layer of stuff to the land. They took, before with the worship of the golden calves, that took them away from Jerusalem and separated them from going down there and the rest of the things that they thought were going to hurt the kingdom. And now we've brought in this whole new religion of the worship of Baal, is I think the more proper way to pronounce it, or we pronounced it Baal, but it's Baal, and this worship of him, and also his consorts, which are the Asherah, Astarte, and Anat, I don't know, anyway. So you've got 2 or 3 of these female consorts that go with the god, and the worship of them that is just unbelievable. We actually do know it, and I probably won't read the stuff to you because it'll stand your hair on end. They actually found writings in Ugaritic that describe a lot of the religious beliefs that surround this Baal worship and the worship of these goddesses, Asherah being the one that we'll see here. And just the perversion that it brings to the nation. It was violent, bloody, and sexually perverted like you cannot believe. It's just crazy the stuff that they brought in and the nation has accepted. And one of the things we've got to wrestle with a little before we can move on is we last time saw them up there and we had the great conflict of Elijah on Mount Carmel with these priests of Baal. And here's Mount Carmel, and I know a lot of you were disappointed to find out that it looks like a little bluff along the Columbia River instead of a mountain. But if you were there, this is a big deal. It's about 1,800 feet from down below here up to the top, or from sea level, which is, if you were to go off to the side there, it's not far to the Mediterranean. It's right up on the breaks of the Mediterranean. But from that height, we had this great conflict between the prophets of Baal and Elijah. And we looked at the story last time of these two offerings that were made and the challenge to call down fire from heaven on the one who is really God. But before we really get there, he came up and he makes his presentation, or his challenge to the people. And if I can find myself here, his question is, verse 21. He came near to all the people. So somewhere up here on the bluff, he comes up and we got folks scattered around watching the show, and probably over on the other side as well, watching this big gathering to see what's going to go on. And he says, how long, in my translation, will you hesitate between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, follow him. And nobody answers him a word. And we looked last time at this hesitate was actually talking about, the Hebrew word is limping, that you're limping and staggering along, faltering between these two opinions. And the question is, for this nation who has seen God do amazing things, who has the record of the Exodus in their possession, and a remembrance of everything God has done throughout from Abraham all the way through, they carry those traditions with them. And they have had that there in their possession. Why on earth would they go for these idols? And why would they go towards these guys in particular? And you have to ask yourself, what is the logic, what is the reason that you go and look at idols? Why would you do that?
Part of it might have been politically correct.
It must have been politically correct. Part of that is probably true. Jezebel, as you will learn to know and love her, is absolutely incredibly evil and just extremely powerful. And this woman is just something else. She just stands your hair on end. If she's not possessed, you wonder why not. She is, remember, she's the daughter of Ethbaal, her father, who was king of Phoenicia, and also a high priest of Baal. I keep saying it wrong. He was the high priest. His name actually means that he's an extreme follower of Baal. And he murdered his way to his position as king and high priest by killing his brothers that were in competition with him. So he murdered his family in order to get that, and Jezebel inherited that. And if you remember, one of the deals we covered is Obadiah meets Elijah out there, and he has protected 100 prophets of God by hiding them in caves somewhere in this mountainous limestone caves in this chunk of mountain. He's hidden them away and fed them and taken care of them because Jezebel is doing what? She's killing them. She's got a purge. What you see happening here in this land is what you saw in Germany when the problem was the Jewish nation. We had to solve the Jewish problem over there, and they started taking them out. She says, we have the priest problem here, and we're going to get that cleared up. And the purpose was to snuff out any competition to Baal. Why would you follow that? Fear, perhaps. But why these people, why couldn't they answer? They're going, why would you go one way or the other?
They were scared spitless.
Some were scared. But what did Baal bring you?
Prosperity.
Prosperity. What did they see? Prosperity. They're in one of the most fertile valleys right near here in all of the land. They had agricultural productivity and they wanted to keep it. They want prosperity. They want good business trading. They want everything to go well. And these gods are the things that bring it. That's what they are there for, is to bring you prosperity, to bring you the thing that you want, success.
This is just speculation, and we'll never know, but I've always wondered if those gods really kind of ever did anything. You know what I'm saying? Did Satan imbue them with power of some sort? Because how could they worship this statue that never did anything versus God who they've seen miraculous works?
Isn't that amazing? So, yeah.
Well, I'm thinking, I just kind of think about myself today and,
Okay.
and the way people are.
Great segue, thank you.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that myself, when things aren't going the way I want them to or quickly enough, that a lot of times people will turn, I mean, not necessarily to some statue or some, but money or sex or just whatever it is that's going to bring them instant pleasure or comfort. Where God never said that you were going to get this instant pleasure and everything in life, but they wanted instant. I think they wanted it
Now.
instant, and a lot of times that's what, well, like I said, they were living in this prosperity. They saw it and believed, maybe through fear, that this Baal or whatever his name was,
Yeah.
was actually the one that was providing it, and so why not go along
Exactly.
with this?
The religion and the worship of idols appeals to our flesh, which is so terribly strong.
Right. It does.
Right.
And I thought about the Phoenicians brought in this culture, like we think of education as the
Oh, yeah.
answer. We want to be like all these.
The gods came along with the package, the high tech, the culture, the success, the prosperity. And Lord, for Phoenicia, we want it here. And we aren't like that today, are we? We don't have idols today, do we? We don't manufacture these little wooden people and stand them around in our houses.
We don't manufacture anymore.
China makes it now.
They're bigger and they fit on the wall.
They're bigger and they fit on the wall, yeah. But we do with things around us in our world the same thing that these people did for the same reasons. We pursue that which brings us prosperity, which brings us happiness, or we hope they do. Why do we go after money?
Well, and it's anything that makes you feel secure. I hate to say it, but
Security.
anything that you put, you hear about hoarders,
Yeah.
who just keep stuff to make themselves feel secure. That's an idol,
Okay.
So money. makes you feel
Entertainment
secure,
makes you feel good and happy, so
You're comfortable. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable.
no. So we want these things, and our world tells us that these are what, if we put our time and energy and interest here, that will deliver what we want. And that's where these people are, and they're no different than us. It's just that as Adam explained to us, the difference in their society and ours is that they saw these gods behind the unseen, the unknown. They didn't understand the weather patterns. They couldn't pop up on their computer the satellite map like some of us tend to want to do every day. Oh, is that storm coming across the Pacific at us? You know, we want to see that thing coming. Where is it? They didn't know that, but they knew that it had its cycles, and they knew. And so Baal, he came alive in the spring, and he made the land prosperous and everything. And then he had this big battle with this other god, and he was killed in the fall, and he went away, and winter came, and this period called winter, this other god ruled. And then in the spring you go back and you do the fertility rites, and you do the worship, and you do all these things right, and he's reborn, and he then comes in and he brings the storms, and he brings the rain, and he keeps you. And so you worship him because your prosperity depends on that. So you see a little wooden god behind it, but we don't see the little wooden god. We see our ability to be successful economically.
I'm just thinking of the health of prosperity people who, basically it's the same thing,
Yeah.
isn't it? If you do this with God, if you do this, and if you do that, then He will bless
Then
you.
God has to bless you in the way that you expect to be blessed. Yeah, so if you just push all the buttons right, see, that's a little bit like the golden calves, you know. If you just go do those, then you don't have to go all the way to Jerusalem and do the whole thing, but you can still get the same benefit. So it's kind of a mixture, and that's your limping between two opinions. Which is it? Is it what God said, or is it the other? I want to read a couple things about idolatry that the Word has to say, just because I know this talking about physical idols they made in their time, but I want you to hear what it says about it. If you would turn with me to Psalm 115, it's a really interesting passage. I know I'm straying from the story, and you're waiting in bated breath to see if it's going to rain in Israel, but I really didn't want us to miss the whole thrust of what's happening in the nation. And this whole psalm is a really interesting passage. It says, "Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to thy name give glory, because thy loving kindness, because thy truth. Why should the nations say, where now is their God?" That's what we just talked about. They are there in the land, so the nations can come by and say, wow, there's God. And he says, we shouldn't be getting glory for ourselves. You should get it, because they shouldn't have to say, so where's your God now? And that's where the nation of Israel was at that point, and I'm not so sure we aren't real close. But it says, our God is in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of man's hands. They have mouths, but they cannot speak. They have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. They have noses, but they cannot smell. They have hands, but they cannot feel. They have feet, but they cannot walk. They cannot make a sound with their throat. Those who make them will become like them, everyone who trusts in them. Did you catch that? He says, the one who makes this thing and expects it, says, look at it. It can't hear, it can't see, it can't smell, it can't taste, it can't say anything. And if you make that and make that your God, you'll be just like it. I think Charlie Brown would say you're a blockhead. That you will become what that is if you trust in them. You'll have eyes but not see, and ears but not hear. That is a scathing judgment of idolatry and of putting your trust and your faith in something that can't see or hear or smell or taste or speak. It's just really coming down hard on it. It says, your God, if you go on, he is the one. Trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. O house of Aaron, trust in the Lord. That's the priesthood. He is their help and their shield. You who fear the Lord, trust in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. The Lord has been mindful of us. He will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless those who fear the Lord, the small together with the great. May the Lord give you increase, you and your children. May you be blessed of the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. The heavens are the heavens of the Lord, but the earth he has given to the sons of men. The dead do not praise the Lord, nor do any who go down into silence. But as for us, we will bless the Lord from this time forth and forever. Praise the Lord. I mean, that's what we're here to do. That's what he wants us to do. He says, don't be like that. Turn one more shot here, if you would, to Isaiah 44. Isaiah is going to come onto the picture real soon in our study. He's just a few kings down the road. And look at verse 9. Those who fashion a graven image are all of them futile, and their precious things are of no profit. Even their own witnesses fail to see or know, so that they will be put to shame. Who has fashioned a god or cast an idol to no profit? Behold, all his companions will be put to shame, for the craftsmen themselves are mere men. Let them all assemble themselves. Let them stand up. Let them tremble. Let them together be put to shame. The man shapes iron into a cutting tool, and he does his work over the coals, fashioning it with hammers and working it with his strong arm. He also gets hungry, and his strength fails. He drinks no water and becomes weary. Another shapes wood. He extends a measuring line. He outlines it with red chalk. He works it with planes and outlines it with a compass, and makes it like the form of a man, like the beauty of a man, so that it may sit in a house. Surely he cuts cedars for himself, and takes a cypress or an oak, and raises it for himself among the trees of the forest. He plants a fir, and the rain makes it grow. Then it becomes something for a man to burn, so he takes one of them and warms himself. He also makes a fire to bake bread. He also makes a god and worships it. He makes it a graven image and falls down before it. Half he burns in the fire, over half he eats meat as he roasts a roast and is satisfied. He also warms himself and says, "Ah, I am warm, I have seen the fire." But the rest of it he makes into a god, his graven image. He falls down before it and worships. He also prays to it and says, "Deliver me, for thou art my God." And you go, did you catch all that? It's really sarcasm. He's saying, you have chosen this chunk of wood and call it your God, and the rest of that chunk of wood you use to throw on the fire and heat yourself and cook your dinner, and it's just common everyday stuff, and now you say, oh, here's my God out of this one.
And they forgot that God made the rain to make it grow.
Yeah, God makes the rain to make it grow. It says the strength, and it comes out in the shape of a man, a beautiful man. It says they don't know anything
In
else.
their houses.
Yeah, they set it in their houses.
Like decoration.
Yeah, it's decoration. Okay. Man, I like the next verse I didn't read there. They do not know, nor do they understand, for he has smeared over their eyes so they cannot see, and their hearts so they cannot comprehend. Blindness, blindness, blindness. And so why am I going on and on about this? Because we do the same things today. The state of the nation of Israel looks almost identical to the state of the United States of America today. It's frightening how similar they are. We worship things that, and we put our energy and our time and our effort into things that are of our own making. Our economic system, our farmers are probably as bad as they come. Because where is all of our stuff focused? And going out there and trying to make that seed grow more. We want all the equipment we can build and all the stuff we can do, and man, we're working, and it's like we think we can make this seed grow. And you want to go, can't you see it's an absolute miracle that you can throw that thing in the ground and it grows, but somehow it's us doing it, boy. And we're going to compete with everybody around to do it better.
Then there's the subtle things like your family.
Family. Now that's pretty touchy there when we talk about family and children, because family first. Oh, family first after. Maybe God should be, it's really subtle. It's really difficult to make those decisions, and not end up limping from one to the other. Oh, well, I know, I know I should be doing this, and God says I should be serving Him, I should be worshiping, but you know, I have to take care of my family, and it's important for them to do. How do you make that decision? Where does it shift from worshiping your children to doing your godly responsibility to your children? Where does it shift from doing your godly responsibility as your job and as a faithful worker, carrying out as unto the Lord what you are called to do for your living, and that living becoming what you worship?
Even our worry about our children.
Oh no, not worry.
Except the time
No, that doesn't count.
that should be given to God.
Because we should worry about things, right?
Well, they won't be paid
If we don't worry, nothing works, right?
like
Yeah. He says you cannot worship both of these. You have to make a decision, is what he told them. He says today you're going to see a demonstration and you have to make a decision.
But even if we do all this for our children, but the essential underneath is so people will think well of us.
No, so it's not just about your kids doing well, it's about you looking good because your kids are doing well. No, surely not.
Thanks, Monet.
Well, it's so subtle, isn't it? I mean, this human nature is so fine a line to walk what God calls you to walk and not fall off of it. And He's not expecting us to be perfect, but what He wants is what we've studied in Matthew chapter 5. He wants a heart that desires to be the right way. Not that we'll always be perfect, that we'll go the right direction. But we've got to be really careful of the influences of the world around us. I wanted to read, this book was written in 1995, so it's a little bit out of date for today, but it's close. So I want you to just hear a perspective on our society and how we are looking very much like the society we're studying about in 1 Kings. So that you don't just say, it was something far away and this weird miraculous thing and all that. You know, that's so foreign to us and anything we can imagine. I want you to think about what we've just talked about briefly about their culture. How it was just debauchery, prostitutes through in every town that were part of the worship. There is all kinds of homosexuality was rampant in this group, and things beyond which you can imagine. It's violent. There was they worshipped, as in our violent movies today. This is from Jeffrey Hart, Professor Jeffrey Hart. It was published in the Wall Street Journal back in the 90s. A great many things happened all of a sudden in this country in the very recent past. Without going into the right or wrong of every case, I list them objectively. Within living memory, abortion was a felony in virtually every state in the nation. Today, abortion is commonplace in America. Demands that it be federally funded are alleged to be rooted in the Constitution. Within living memory, hardcore pornography was largely kept out of sight, usually by a rough agreement between sellers and authorities. Now the hardcore stuff is available on your newsstand, and I would submit that it's available at your home sitting on your counter on a computer, if you're connected to the internet. Within living memory, school children recited the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, and in many schools, simple prayers. At Christmas time, they sang Christmas carols. Suddenly, all of that fell under proscription. In other words, it's prohibited. Within living memory, homosexuals were for the most part discreet. Suddenly we find they demand public legitimization of their peculiarity, stage parades, and demand representation in governing bodies as a legitimate minority. Is there any question that a revolution has in fact been imposed upon an unsuspecting nation? That's the end of this little article. I would suggest you look at your ballot to see just how far it has come, and if you've seen the TV advertisements on that one, how since '95 it has been pushed even further into our consciousness of what we are and what we accept.
Even if we vote it down, does it spring up again?
And it seems to keep coming back and coming back and coming back.
But it's even gone that step further that now it's looking like those who oppose these things will be persecuted.
Yeah.
So that's even.
And were people that opposed Jezebel and her agenda persecuted?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, they were. By the time if you fast forward and read ahead, you will find Elijah in a depression going, oh God, there's no one left but me. And God says, no, you're not. However, think about this. It says, I have 7,000 that have not bowed the knee to Baal. 7,000 in the entire nation of Northern Kingdom. Only 7,000. So yes, God has His faithful ones, but they are not a huge majority. So since we are so overwhelmed, we just give up, right? It's interesting that God brings, and this is the picture I think you see in Elijah, God brings one man. Yes, there are these others, and they're hiding in caves and places, and they're trying to hang on, but He brings this one guy, and he's nobody from Tishbe. He looks tough, he looks rough, he looks like the guys that lived out there on the frontier. He's got no name, no big shot, no connections to government, and he stands up and says, this is what God says, with conviction. And he doesn't know a whole ton of stuff, but he knows what God says, and he knows he's going to be faithful to it. And it changes the course of a nation over time. I mean, immediately we don't see that, but God uses that one individual in an amazing way. So who's to say that God cannot, in application, Mapton is about as good of middle of nowhere in the United States of America as you can get, next to maybe Bickleton, you know? Alderdale. I mean, this is not the center of everything that happens in the nation. So how important is it for us as Mapton Grace Brethren Church to stand up and say, I know what I believe and I know what the Lord teaches and I stand upon it. And you think that it makes no difference or no impact, and it makes huge impact. We just may not live to see it. We have to have faith that we're called to stand, that we need to do that, don't we?
But we make our stand not necessarily make a difference when we're commanded.
We're commanded to do it, just as He was.
God's, and that's
He's the one that...
we do it. We don't do it because we're going to make a difference.
He says, today you need to decide. If the Lord is God, follow Him. But if the culture of the United States of America is right, is God, follow Him. And He expects an answer that they didn't get. And today I fear that we're in the same place as when that question gets asked, where you're like so many people being interviewed by the press going, well, you know, yeah, I want to say that, but gosh, it may not be popular. It's really, really hard sometimes for us to stand up and speak out and say, this is who God is, and this is what I believe. And it may not be in a big forum. You may not be in front of the president or in front of the United Nations or some world power. It may be in front of your family and close friends and those who you work with. It's the people that are around you that God says, I just want you to be faithful to what I've called you to do and make a stand for me.
Excuse me. It brought home to me this week, you know, we don't think, we think we're just kind of, like you say, that the people in town know what's going on, know what we're doing. We've had two people this week that were connected with the church, and I didn't think they had any idea.
That you were part of this church.
Well, that asked about Pastor Paul, and the fellow that Paul's force came over there yesterday morning, got the car on the truck. He said, well, you haven't got anybody living in the house? So he knew that Pastor Paul was gone. You know, they don't have any connection with the church, the people around town know what's happening.
They see. I wanted to finish with the one thing that's usually hanging out there. We're just about out of time. Kathy and I talked about it this morning. One of the things that people will fire at you, and maybe you're even thinking to yourself, well, if God would just do what He did there. Man, if He would bring down fire and just zap that sacrifice, everybody in Mapton would go, whoa! And we would all be on the bandwagon and we would go. And so I want to read you this passage, Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1. God, after He spoke long ago to fathers in the prophets, in many portions and in many ways, in these last days has spoken to us in a Son, whom He appointed heir of all things, through whom also He made the world. And He is the radiance of His glory and the exact representation of His being, and upholds all things by the word of His power. When He had made purification for sin, He sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. And goes on to talk about His position of being the Supreme One. Chapter 2, after He explains who this God, this Son is in detail, which we don't have time to read through all that, says, "For this reason we must pay much closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it." It says, you just read in 1 Kings that God did that. Do you believe it? Because that's His testimonies in His Son and in what we have heard about Him and what God has recorded that He has done. And the challenge to us is not to expect fire to come from heaven, but we have much greater revelation than Elijah ever thought of. Do we believe it? Are we willing to pay attention to it? And are we going to pay attention lest we drift away from it? Which is exactly what they have done.
In my daily reading, and I got this verse underlined in Titus. For the grace of God brings salvation. That brings salvation has appeared to all men, teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age, while we wait for the blessed hope, the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there it is. God has given us, right there in Titus, God's told us. Here it is. It's given us everything we need. So, on those days when you're looking for that fire to come down from heaven and zap that person that's opposing you, or those days when you start, yeah.
I guess I have to throw this out. You're talking about that fire from heaven. Back in those days where we won't see that today, I guess I'm thinking of all that God is revealing to us in science and the marvelous things that we're learning about, and yet we know that God created all of this, and He's the master of all of this interest. I don't know what the
mind-boggling stuff. Yeah.
All this very minute and delicate and difficult things to imagine, but there are those of the world that are blind to that, that refuse to accept the fact that God created all of that, and we are to marvel at what He's done.
It's almost like our fire from heaven every time they make a new discovery.
I think we can use prayer as an illustration. Those of us who have seen
When you've seen God answer prayers to things that there was no hope.
People say, well, God doesn't answer prayer today.
Yeah.
That's because they don't take no as an answer.
Yeah.
No is an answer the same as yes.
Yeah. Yeah, God answers in different ways, and we don't always want to hear the answers. But He's certainly done it among us. Let's close. We have folks that are going to be pacing the floor out there. I need to stop. Father, thank You for our time together this morning. To kind of step back from our study for a moment, just to evaluate the comparison between us and our society and the world we live in, and the things we believe and the things we do, to those of this ancient culture. To realize that the culture changes and the way we do things changes and the technology changes, but the heart of man is still the same. And the best part of the whole thing is that the heart of God is still the same. That You still love us, that back then You had provided for them the looking ahead to the sacrifice that would take away the sin of the world, and we look back to that Son that Hebrews records that You have provided for us. that you have spoken to us in Him, that He exactly represents you in every facet, and that He has provided for us this great salvation and this great opportunity to live a life of fulfillment and joy, and to fulfill all the needs that you have created within man, to know you and to understand you, and be able to enjoy our lives here as well as the life to come. Father, help us in the difficult times and the challenging times of life, and we're tempted to believe the world's spiel about where the God is, that you are the God. Give us a heart that wants to hunger and thirst for righteousness. And would you use us, Father, for your glory, to magnify yourself in this land, in this place where you call us. In Jesus' name.